in more modern sightings that we have about 15 confirmed sightings from people that believe they've seen it. Now, we assume that there are many more who don't report it, or they just kind of throw away their sighting as it must have been a submerged log or possibly a lateral wave or something else. It couldn't be a serpent. But we have well over a dozen in the last 15, 20 years of people that have seen something.
Have there been any investigations looking for Pepe like there have been for Loch Ness Monster, where you had an entire flotilla of boats using sonar trying to find the monster?
Nothing yet. As of such, the story of Pepe, or the legend of Pepe, was nearly forgotten throughout history. Like many sea serpents throughout the U.S., the early 1900s were a terrible time for sightings, that whether the media stopped reporting it or the people stopped seeing it, you can't find a lot of sightings in the 20s and 30s. And then throughout the 60s on, it started to take off again in Lake Pepin, and it wasn't until 2008 when it got a lot of notoriety. Now, there have been several smaller expeditions, one of which was done on Labor Day of 2009 when a scuba diver actually had a face-to-face, if you will, encounter with a beast that he thought was Pepe. But there have only been a handful of very small expeditions, not like, the Operation Deep Scan of Loch Ness years past.
Now, taking the consistency of the Mississippi River, it's muddy, it's dark. Could this diver have actually come face-to-face with a giant catfish or a sturgeon?
Certainly possible. Now, he was actually there in 2009, Labor Day weekend. They set off on an expedition. They had several boats. They had their sonar going. And what happened was their sonar picked up a very large object underwater. And it didn't seem like it was a school of fish for them. And the diver, who was already a bit hesitant because many of his diving friends said that the Mississippi, as you said, is full of very large animals.
Yeah.
Sturgeon. We know muskie are in there, alligator gar are in there, and who knows what else. So he was already a little bit shaky about going under. And he went under looking for this object. And as he finally got to the deep part, which in Lake Pepin, the deepest it gets is about 75 feet, as he got down there, a funny sensation came over him where he said that his body just kind of went silent and a tinging. And all of a sudden, he saw something black and big move toward him, and it seemed to have flushed its tail or something, created a huge vortex that sent him spinning underwater. At the same time, above ground, the filmmakers saw something about 30 feet away from where the diver saw it, and they saw something moving they couldn't explain. And as the diver caught his senses, he rushed up to the water and started screaming, "Get me out of here, it's big, it's big." And to this day, he thinks he had an encounter with something unknown.
What does the scientific community say about all these legends, the folklore? Is there any basis for the scientific community to actually take these sightings seriously?
Well, I think a lot of the people that see these things, or that the scientists that on the outskirts study them, believe that it is nothing more than a lake sturgeon or a alligator gar or a large catfish. And a lot of these creatures can get up to lengths of 9 feet tall, a couple 100 pounds. And if you're underwater and a 9-foot-long, 300-pound sturgeon brushes up against you, for all intents and purposes, that's going to seem like a sea serpent to you.
It sure will.
So I think they try to explain it away as a normal animal that is in there, not something that's undiscovered.
There's a Loch Ness museum on Lake Champlain. There's a museum for Champ. Let me see. In Okanagan, Lake Okanagan, Ogopogo, there's a museum to its honor. Is there any type of museum or recognition of Pepe along the Mississippi River?
Nothing as of yet. And that's the weird thing, is that most of these towns that have a paranormal legend attached to them, they try to promote it and bring in tourists. And Lake Pepin didn't do that for the longest time. And even now, after the 2008 reward, many people in the community that I've spoken with still don't want to promote it as a hotbed for Pepe, because it is a very heavily touristed area. A lot of boaters are there and vacationers. So they want to keep it family friendly, and they think the inclusion of a sea serpent is going to actually turn people off to Lake Pepin, whereas I believe that people will flock there trying to see this creature.
Well, sure, it works for Roswell, New Mexico with the alleged crash in 1947. It works for Bigfoot in the western part of the States and Canada. So why wouldn't they want a little bit of extra revenue being generated on a legend, and a legend is part of history?
Well, that's where it really sprang in with the local businessman who owns not only a hotel right on the lake, but also an 1800s replica paddle boat that gives tours on the lake. He was watching a documentary one day on the Loch Ness Monster, and he noticed the similarities. He had just heard about an 1871 account of people seeing something the size between an elephant and a rhinoceros that moved through Lake Pepin with great rapidity. And he was watching this, and he thought, why are we not focusing on our unique history? The only difference between Pepe and Loch Ness, he thought, was that Loch Ness was universally known, where Pepe, nobody had heard of it. So that's where he came up with the idea that they should promote this as part of the town's history. Whether it's true or not, I don't know if he knows or if he's made up his mind yet, but he certainly feels that this is a great part of their local history.
And I'm sure the members of the First Nation tribe also agree with him.
Yes. Of course, many of the Native Americans of the first settlers there, dating back to the 1830s, their land was taken from them with some treaties, and they moved out of the area. But yeah, they still believe that it celebrates their history as well. That, of course, serpents and lake monsters play a big part in a lot of the native creation stories of the serpents of the water battling with the beast of the sky. And there are stories of the beast shooting up water and rocks, and the beast up a flying beast shooting down rocks on these serpents and engaging in wars. So I think a lot of people are seeing it as something that is unique and something that may just bring people there.
Chad, stand by. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exonation Chad Lewis is our special guest. We're talking about Pepe, the lake monster of the Mississippi River. His website is www.chadlewisresearch.com, and Chad and I will be back on the other side of this news break. Don't go away. Are you considering calling a psychic to read your situation? Then consider David Champion, a psychic medium for more than 20 years with thousands of readings under his belt. David Champion will make you feel comfortable. He has proven to be honest and accurate. He's a straight shooter. There's no guesswork. What he sees is what you get. While he is a medium, most of the calls focus on relationships, not only love, but work, school, neighbors, and more. Need help with finding a job and preparing for the interview? Are you dealing with people who are obstacles in your path? For more information, go to davidchampion.com, $1.50 per minute paid by credit card with a minimum of 30 minutes. For your reading with David Champion, call 1-877-702-8598. That's 1-877-702-8598. Now you can dial in to listen to the X-Zone Radio Show from anywhere in the world with Rob McConnell 24/7, 365 by dialing 213-401-0080. That's 213-401-0080. If you have a mobile phone or landline, the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is now at your beck and call at 213-401-0080. That's 213-401-0080, 24/7, 365. Chad Lewis is my special guest this hour. Exonation, www.chadlewisresearch.com is his website. Along with Noah Voss, he's the author of Pepe, the Lake Monster of the Mississippi River. Once again, his website, chadlewisresearch.com. What about other paranormal legends that may be attached to the lake as well as the Mississippi River? Have you investigated or heard of any others?
Yes, there are several others that seem to add to the mystique of the Mississippi River, of course, and Lake Pepin. One of my favorite is a place in Maiden Rock, and it's the tragic tale of Princess Winona, who was a Native American woman who was said to have been forced to marry a man she did not love, and instead of marrying him, she went over to a 400-foot cliff and jumped off and ended her life at the bottom of the rocks on that cliff. And ever since this story originated, which we've dated it back to the early 1800s, maybe even the late 1700s, people have seen what appears to be this spectral image of this woman jumping off of a cliff. Others will hear her death song that she allegedly sang as they pass by Maiden Rock, which is a well-known feature of rock on the Wisconsin side of the Mississippi. People will hear the song of this maiden, yet nobody can be found. And those who go to Maiden Rock, even in the water, just get a sense that something's not right, that they're picking up on something that this shouldn't be there.
You know, there are many similarities between the story that you're telling me, the legend that you're talking to me about, and our very own Niagara Falls, Ontario, where there's a rich history of First Nations, and there's also a history of a maiden involved in many of the legends. There's a history of a serpent in the base of the falls. And here's another interesting similarity: Father Hennepin was there as well, and believed in this legend.
Yeah, we may have Father Hennepin to thank for many of these stories, and whether he embellished them or not, we don't know. But it was his job to write down a lot of the wildlife and the plant life, and he ended up taking down some folklore as well.
I'm just wondering if he used the folklore as a way to bring people towards his religion, Catholicism. You've got monsters, and, they are there, and if you believe in our God and our religion, you will be protected. It's a bit of a marketing tool for way back then, but you've got to think of all possibilities.
Certainly, a scare tactic seems to be one of the best things you can use to get people. So, that's a great point. I hadn't thought of Father Hennepin using it to his recruiting, if you will.
Well, we know that works today in religion as well, so we'll just leave that for another show. On your expeditions, what methods have you tried to capture proof of Pepe?
I've been on 2 official expeditions and dozens of day and weekend trips to Lake Pepin. My first expedition was in 2011, the second one much longer in 2013. And we ran the gamut of things using. We had our sonar going. We had underwater cameras and video going. We had people with a makeshift chum and fishing trying to capture it. We even were in the water ourselves, looking to use ourselves as some sort of bait to try to lure this thing in. So we tried to capture everything we could, because we really, when dealing with the unknown, we really don't know what's going to work. And it's hard to rule out something as being too weird and too bizarre when you're dealing with the weird and bizarre.
And as a credible researcher and as a psychologist, did you check with local law enforcement, sheriff's office, or even the Coast Guard to see if they had any reports?
Yes, we talk not only with local law enforcement, but with the local DNR, the Department of Natural
Resources. Yeah.
And again, a lot of them